Now, I thought it best to do a flow relating to the movement of the statements of poll. So we start with the presiding officer. Obviously, the presiding officer prepares, certifies, packages those documents, and transmits same to his or her deputy returning officer. That DRO will then obviously receive all of the packages from a cluster in which he or she has responsibility for. DROs usually will have a responsibility for between 9 and 14 polling stations. We call that a cluster of polling stations. So let's say I'm a DRO, I will receive packages from 10 presiding officers in Subdistrict 4. Subdistrict 1 of District 4, sorry. I will then be required to transmit that to my boss, either the RO or the supernumerary RO, who will then obviously receive it, ensure that the packages for the chairman and the CEO are also delivered to them at headquarters at the most opportune time or with immediacy. The first thing that the RO or SRO needs to do is to ensure that they verify the contents of PE2 containing 11, 12, and 13 and do some logging. Person handing over, which would be a DRO, will sign. Person receiving, quite likely a DRO or DRO at that office. They go into the PE13 and extract the statements of poll therein. And there's a system deployed that will be deployed at each of those officers' offices that will see the scanning and uploading to the website. So as soon as practicable after receipt, I would say immediately, they are scanned and uploaded to the website. This website is publicly available. It's updated in real time. So the entire world will be seeing what has been received by the RO. There's a process of a verification of those documents, those statements of poll. The verification includes a cursory check to determine whether there are any material errors evident on such statement. Accuracy in this case means the discovery or not of a material error. Materials error includes missing information or whether the numbers there, a quick look at them, do not necessarily add back to the totals that are required in the middle column. So that would fall under the category of a material error. If there are material errors discovered on any of the statements of poll, the RO or the SRO is required to summon the presiding officer to correct same. And this is done in the presence of agents there at the office. If there are no statements or if the statements are accurate, then or statements have been corrected, they are queued for ascertainment. So at some appointed time, the process commences. Now, this will vary from district to district, depending on the geography, depending on how statements are received and when. It could happen anywhere from between 10 p.m. in the night all the way into the next morning, very early. To commence, point to note is that there is no need for us to wait until the entirety of statements of poll have been received in order to commence. There shall be a separation where the RO may assign a DRO the responsibility to receive while he or she is conducting the ascertainment. And I like to use the word ascertainment because that is what the law speaks to, but I know colloquially we like to say tabulation. So this is the tabulation process. So what happens at tabulation? Now, I'll run you through the process and I'll also show you what it looks like in the next slide. So the first statement of poll is displayed on a screen to the left, and on a screen to the right, there is displayed the tabulation form. In the case of districts 3, 4, and 6, that would be a sub-district tabulation form. It is a spreadsheet that has listed there all of the ballot boxes belonging to the particular district or sub-district. The first SOP is displayed, and the RO or the SRO would commence the announcement of the figures from that which is displayed on screen. While those figures are being announced, a data entry clerk or another assigned staff will be manning a computer that will be displaying the tabulation form in which those figures are going to be seen concomitant with its announcement. Upon the completion of the entry, the entire row, I think the last value on the statement of poll is total number of tendered ballot issued. Am I correct, Mr. Nardio? Total tendered ballots issued. The RO shall pause to hear or receive a thumbs up from those agents present as to whether there are any objections or not to this statement. As Mr. Nardio said, the RO is required not to proceed to the next statement of poll until all of the objections or queries or concerns have been addressed. At that point, there is a capture of that image of that statement of poll, and it is stored, and the process is repeated until the completion of all of the statements for the district or sub-district. Now, this has to be a process that caters to all of the general election statements of poll and then the regional or vice versa. But I think the intention is to ensure that we don't switch between general, then regional, general, then regional. That you complete an entire component, there will be separate district tabulation forms for both. After the process is complete, it will culminate in a district or sub-district tabulation form, which has to be then printed and certified by the RO or SRO. At which point he or she will declare the results of those elections in his or her district or sub-district, distribute copies of those documents to persons present and authorized to receive same, and then deliver those results to either the CEO or the RO. The RO in the case of those sub-districts. Now, at the office of the returning officer for 3, 4, and 6, they will be required to receive sub-district tabulation forms, which will go through a similar process of display and tabulation. So every district will generate, certify, and distribute a district tabulation form, which will then be delivered to the chief election officer for his stage of the process. This is what it will likely look like at those offices. As a matter of fact, for your information, this particular room is the center that the supernumerary returning officer of North Georgetown, Subdistrict 3 of District 4, shall do that process. You see, as you can see, you have two screens, one left displaying the statement of poll, and on the right, you have the tabulation form. You have the RO there announcing the figures. We will employ the use of a document camera under which the statement of poll will be placed and then displayed on the left-hand display. The data entry clerk also will be in front of a computer that is connected to the right screen, and all of the agents, duly appointed candidates, and quite likely yourselves will be present. So after this process is complete, we have to now move the process to the office of the chief election officer, who is required to, by law, prepare a report in manual and electronic form, including a report of the allocation of seats to the National Assembly. And I forgot to mention that the responsibility for allocation of seats to regional democratic councils is that of the returning officer, who will then deliver those results, those allocations, to the chief election officer. So the chief election officer his report shall contain allocation of seats to the National Assembly, to regional democratic councils, and a report of the using the district tabulation forms that have been delivered to him to the chairman and the commission. Now, I want to use an illustrative example to go through how seats are allocated. I think this is very important. So, as Mr. Nardio alluded to earlier, parties gain seats in proportion to the number of votes cast for them under the proportional representation method. And it stands to reason under that method, under that system, if a party wins 40% of the votes cast in an election, then they should receive 40% of the seats available for such an election. So in this example, let's just say that we have a parliament with 5 seats, and these are the results of the elections. Party A gained 40% of the votes, they are allocated 2 seats. Party B, 35%, they will receive 2 seats. And Party D, with 20% of the votes, will receive the final seat. Unfortunate for Party C, who has not made the cut. Now, how is this done? How do we determine that 40% equates to 2 and 35 equates to 2? We employ the use of the Hare quota. Now, a Hare quota, some of you may know it as a simple quota, the Hamilton quota, the largest remainder quota, or the largest remainder method. It's a simple method that is exactly the number of votes a party needs to be guaranteed a seat. And how that is calculated, you divide the total number of valid votes cast for all parties' lists of candidates by the number of seats available, giving you the electoral quota. Now, for our example, let's move on. We have a parliament with 65 seats. We have an election in which 200,000 valid votes have been polled and ascertained, and the number of geographical constituencies are 4. The electoral quota calculated in this example equates to 3,076.92. When we check the results, Party A received 67,917, and the numbers are there before you. We calculated the quota to be 3,076.92. And so using Party A as an illustration, we find that dividing the total votes received, valid votes received for that party, divided by the quota equates to 22.07. The 0.07 is important. This party has automatically acquired 22 seats with a remainder of 0.07. As we move on, similarly, Party B got 35 with a remainder of 0.73, and Party C 7 seats with a remainder of 0.2. Now, if we sum 22 plus 35 plus 7, we get 64, but we're looking for 65. Where does the other seat come from? Quite simple, the party with the largest remainder. Evidently so, Party B receives the extra seat, thereby allocating 65 seats in the National Assembly. Now, the Representation of the People Act and our electoral system caters to, as mentioned earlier, geographical constituencies. And you've all heard the term geographical constituency lists and national top-up lists. So there must be some form of calculation done to determine who the persons are, how many seats are to come from the geographical constituencies, and the remainder coming from the national top-up lists. So this is a bit longer and greater calculation we have to do. The same principle applies. Total number of valid votes divided by the total number of seats available, establish an electoral quota, and find the seats using the whole and remainder calculations. So we end up here. Could we remove the picture-in-picture, please? So we have 4 geographical constituencies. And we found that those are the totals that summate to 200,000 valid votes cast. The seats available to each geographical constituency are, for this example, 6, 9, 7, and 3. And I should say that, well, just to clarify, for this election, we have 10 geographical constituencies, each of which have a specific number of seats as per the Act. In our Act, we have 6, 9, 7, and 3. So I put up some figures there, random numbers that these parties would have acquired in the geographical constituencies. And for each, we have totals, which will then help us to ascertain the quota for each geographical constituency. When we do the math, just like we did earlier, we found that these are the seats that were allocated in terms of whole numbers. In this case, we are trying to allocate 25 seats. But when I look at the bottom, I find that we have only allocated 19. How much we left back with, Nar? 6. So again, we find the remainders. And we allocate the additional seats. We found that actually Party A got 4 of the remaining seats. Party B got 1. And Party C, finally, they got 1. That being said, we have now determined the quantum of seats that will be allocated as per geographical constituency, totaling to 25. We have 40 seats remaining. Simple arithmetic. Total number of seats for Party A, 22. It means that they won 10 from geo-allocations. The remaining 12 comes from the national top-up list. As you can see there, we have allocated from geo 25, from national top-up, the remaining 40, some 65 seats in that parliament. My presentation was not as long as Mr. Nardio. I didn't bore you guys, did I?